Hello everyone. In this video we are going to learn about the arteries of the brain. Two vertebral arteries and two internal carotid arteries. They carry the total arterial supply to the brain. In this video we will be talking about the vertebral arteries only. The vertebral artery you can see in this diagram, right? You can see the internal carotid is also shown, but right now only we are going to talk about the vertebral artery. You can see vertebral artery passing through this vertebrae, right? Now the vertebral artery on each side is a branch of the first part of the subclavian artery, and its course is divided into four parts. We'll see that. In this diagram you can see that it is arising from the subclavian artery, and then the course of this vertebral artery, it is divided into four parts: first, second, third and the fourth part, right? Now first part, it lies from its origin from the subclavian artery up to the foramen transversorium of the sixth cervical vertebra. Okay, this foramen transversorium, you know that it is the feature that is present only in the cervical vertebrae, right? A foramen is present called as foramen transversorium. Second part, it courses from the foramen transversoria of the sixth cervical vertebra up to the first cervical vertebra. Then comes the third part. The third part, it lies on the posterior arch of the atlas vertebra. Okay, and the fourth part of the vertebral artery enters the cranium through the foramen magnum and under the free margin of the posterior atlanto-occipital membrane. Okay, so this is how it will enter the cranium through the foramen magnum, right? And the part that is present inside the cranium is the fourth part of the vertebral artery, or you can also say the intracranial part of the vertebral artery. Now this vertebral artery, it enters the subarachnoid space in the upper part of the vertebral canal after piercing the dura mater and the arachnoid mater. Then it curves around the ventrolateral aspect of the medulla oblongata between the rootlets of the hypoglossal nerve to unite with its fellow artery at the lower border of the pons and forms the median basilar artery. We will see this. In this diagram, you can see these two are the vertebral arteries, right? Now these two vertebral arteries, right, they are on the ventrolateral aspect of the medulla oblongata, right, and they both are uniting at the lower border of the pons to form this basilar artery. Now the branches of this vertebral artery, we will be only taking the intracranial branches of the vertebral artery here. First, you can see here is the posterior spinal artery, right? It is the first intracranial branch. It passes inferiorly on the spinal medulla among the dorsal roots of the spinal nerves. Second is the posterior inferior cerebellar artery. Here you can see the posterior inferior cerebellar artery. It is the largest branch of the vertebral artery, and after piercing its meninges, that is the intracranial largest branch. Okay, it pursues a tortuous course, passes between the rootlets of the hypoglossal, vagus and glossopharyngeal nerves, supplies almost lateral half of the medulla as far as the lower border of the pons, reaches its posterior aspect between the thin roof of the cavity of the fourth ventricle and cerebellum, gives a choroidal branch to the choroid plexus of the fourth ventricle and turns downwards on the cerebellum, supplying it, right? As the name suggests, it is supplying the cerebellum. Next, you can see here is the anterior spinal artery that is formed by a branch from both the vertebral arteries. So anterior spinal artery is formed by the union of the branch from each vertebral artery on the ventral surface of the medulla oblongata close to the pons. It supplies the median part of the medulla oblongata and continues inferiorly throughout the length of the spinal cord. Next is the medullary branches, and here you can see the meningeal branches. Now as it is crossing the medulla, it will give numerous branches to the medulla oblongata, right? So as vertebral artery ascends along the medulla oblongata, it gives a number of branches to the medulla. And meninges also it is present, so it will also give few branches to the meninges. So these are the meningeal branches. Next we will take is the basilar artery. As we have already seen, the two vertebral arteries at the lower border of the pons unite and form the basilar artery, right? Now this basilar artery, it is formed by the union of the two vertebral arteries at the lower border of the pons. It lies in the median groove of the pons. This, you already know this, right? We have talked about this in the pons also. In the cisterna pontis, and at the upper border of the pons, it ends by dividing into two posterior cerebral arteries, right? It is beginning at the lower border of the pons and ending at the upper border of the pons. At the lower border of the pons, it is formed by the union of two vertebral arteries, and at the upper border of the pons, it ends by dividing into two posterior cerebral arteries. Now the branches of the basilar artery, first is the anterior inferior cerebellar artery. Here you can see the anterior inferior cerebellar artery. It arises at the lower border of the pons and passes laterally, supplying the 6th, 7th and the 8th cranial nerves. It then loops over the flocculus of the cerebellum and supplies antero-inferior aspect of the cerebellum. Second, you can see is the labyrinthine artery. This one. Labyrinthine artery, it accompanies the vestibulocochlear nerve, that is the 8th nerve, and enters the internal auditory meatus to supply the internal ear. It is an end artery, remember that. Then third is the pontine branches, right? As it is crossing the pons, so it will give many pontine branches. These are numerous slender branches which pierces the pons both in the median and the lateral parts. Then comes the superior cerebellar artery. Here you can see the superior cerebellar artery is shown. It arises close to the superior border of the pons, winds posteriorly along the superior border of the pons and middle cerebellar peduncle, supplying the both. It sends many branches to the superior surface of the cerebellum. And the last is two terminal branches, that is posterior cerebral branches. They diverge at the upper border of the pons. This gives rise to number of central, or you can say posteromedial group of the branches into the ventral surface of the midbrain, and then curve posterolateral to midbrain at the inferomedial surface of the corresponding hemisphere, supplying it with the cortical branches. So again, we will be seeing the branches of the posterior cerebral arteries because they are forming a posteromedial group of the branches in the central part. Okay. Now you can see this one more diagram. We will understand this. Okay. Now here you can see the posterior cerebral artery is shown, right? And this is the branching of the posterior cerebral artery, right? Now, so we will be learning about the branches of the posterior cerebral artery. First is the posteromedial central branches. This pierces the ventral surface of the base of the brain, thus forming the posterior perforated substance in the interpeduncular fossa. This supply the midbrain and the caudal part of the diencephalon. Okay. So, posterior perforated substance, it is formed by the branches of the posterior cerebral arteries. Second is the posterior choroidal artery, right? That is shown in the diagram. You can see the posterior choroidal artery. This arises on the lateral aspect of the central branches, right? It supplies the choroid plexus of the lateral ventricle and the third ventricle. This is the posterior choroidal artery. Above it you can see the central branches, right? The central branches, they form the posteromedial central group, right? This is the posteromedial central group that is forming the posterior perforated substance. Then second is the posterior choroidal artery. Third is the cortical branches. Cortical branches, namely the temporal branches, parieto-occipital branch and occipital branch to the cerebral cortex, right? Cortical means cortex. That is, you can see the temporal branch and occipital branches are shown here. Okay. So that is all, I guess, about the branches of the posterior cerebral artery. The last part is the clinical anatomy. Now the clinical anatomy of the vertebral and the basilar arteries. Thrombosis of the posterior cerebral artery results in homonymous hemianopia on the opposite side. Okay, what is homonymous hemianopia? It is a condition in which a person sees only one side, right or left, of the visual world of each eye. The person may not be aware that the vision loss is happening in both the eyes, not just one. Okay, so there might be a confusion also. Next is thrombosis of the superior cerebellar artery. It results in cerebellum, it results in the disturbed gait and limb ataxia. Okay, disturbed gait means there is a difficulty in walking, and limb ataxia means ataxia of the limb. Ataxia means loss of the control of the bodily movements, right? And in brainstem, it will lead to ipsilateral Horner's syndrome. Right, Horner's syndrome, we have also talked about this previously. It is a combination of the sign and symptoms that is caused by the disruption of a nerve pathway from the brain to the face and eye on one side of the body. Typically, if we see Horner's syndrome, it results in the decreased pupil size, a drooping eyelid, and decreased sweating on the affected side of the face. Then contralateral sensory loss, pain and temperature, including the face. Okay, that is the damage to the brainstem in superior cerebellar artery thrombosis. Next, damage to the anterior inferior cerebellar artery. It results in cerebellum ipsilateral limb ataxia, and that is same side, and brainstem ipsilateral Horner's syndrome. Right, same side Horner's syndrome, right, as in the superior cerebellar artery. Sensory loss, again pain and temperature of the face. Facial weakness and paralysis of the lateral gaze, that is the lateral side vision, and contralateral sensory loss, pain and temperature of the limbs and trunk. Right, now you are aware with the functions of the brainstem, so you can correlate all this applied anatomy. Next is the thrombosis of the posterior inferior cerebellar artery. It causes damage to cerebellum. In that it leads to dysarthria, then ipsilateral limb ataxia, vertigo and nystagmus. Right, nystagmus, you already know what is nystagmus. It is a continuous oscillatory movements of the eye, right? And dysarthria, it is a condition in which the muscles for the speech are weak and there is a difficulty controlling them. Right, so there is a slurred speech or a slow speech that is difficult to understand. Then in the brainstem, it leads to ipsilateral Horner's syndrome, sensory loss, pain and temperature of the face, pharyngeal and laryngeal paralysis, and contralateral sensory loss, pain and temperature of the limbs and the trunk. Okay, so that is all about the applied anatomy of the vertebral and the basilar arteries. In the next video, we will be learning about internal carotid artery. Bye.